So we saw a couple of really nice examples of visualizations. Oftentimes, I think in particular, internal audiences or clients' perspective is the big question of, we have all these big data sets, many different audiences want to look at those data sets. So how do we, from your experiences, build the bridge between in that data analysis and then also the very simple storytelling to, in particular, I guess, the senior audiences? Is it via infographics, dashboards? We have seen a couple of examples. Maybe, Greg, you want to give your perspective first?
Sure. I think it's habitual that many brands want to target decision makers. But it's quite often the case that decision makers really are not involved into the purchase decision, even if it's a $1 million purchase, until about 90% of that work is done. We find that there's over 6 folks involved in the average decision and representing different departments. And it's always prudent to focus on those exact individuals that are actually researching and in market, to know where they are in that buyer journey and send them the right message so it's very relevant to their experience. Personalization, it's all about that.
Kevin, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think the complication is obviously taking things at dual levels, right? Because there's a tremendous amount of information you need to get into a system to be able to, first of all, make the right analysis, but you have to simplify it for a top-level decision and then have the ability to drill down and get more granular. So what we've approached in kind of looking at visualization and how that works is to make sure that we have as much of the data as possible in the platform, but set up really kind of a top-level dashboard for the larger decision makers, but then have the ability to drill down and get into the weeds, because ultimately that's where you get the great insights, and that's where you're going to get a lot of facilitation with that process.
Yeah, and thank you. And Carsten, we've seen some very nice way to visualize data in your presentation, in particular the infographics, the simple storytelling. You must process a lot of data and people must be very interested in the detail. How do you find that balance when you report the results?
But I also think that's insanely difficult, and it's a big challenge for us because, as you say, the real nuggets of gold is deep down into the data, but we also want to help clients and help people understand what's the top line stories. So I think we need to have people that digest data for us, digest data for executives, and present those while at the same time giving in-depth knowledge for it. So giving your data free while still controlling the main story.
Yeah, thank you for your perspective. Carsten, a follow-up question, in particular since you are with Google, so probably at the cutting edge of that. There's this question of more and more data is analyzed and processed today, and even more so in the future, via machines and algorithms. And to what extent do you see the balance between machine-generated insights and human-generated insights, and where do the two meet? Do they not meet? Like, where do you see the trends there?
Yeah, and I think that's really the million-dollar question right now. So we're moving from a big data world, which is big but understandable by human mind, into a machine learning AI world where we look at data in a fully different way. I think we will need to learn techniques to cut that data and cut that understanding into chunks of understanding that's really processable by the human mind. I think those startups that will understand how to visualize and make machine learning insights into human insights will really have a good time out there.
Okay, good. Kevin?
I mean, it's a really challenging process. I mean, we tracked over 2 billion consumers on a daily basis and all of their interactions across the web. And there's a tremendous amount of data coming in, and you do have to separate the human part of it from the algorithms and almost the artificial intelligence part of it. And as Carsten said, take it in bite-sized pieces as it comes along. Otherwise, just the amount of processing and the amount of insights, it has to be automated.
Greg?
Yes, our data is raw, and it's all about predictability between us and the brand. So our data in Eyeota helps us to give predictability to the marketers, because there's trends and habits and behaviors that certainly have a way of repeating itself. So the more we can visualize that data and make it insightful for the brand, the happier we all are.
So I think it's very fitting, obviously, the topic of this panel. It looks like the more data we have available, the more important the visualization becomes. So building that into an AI interface is probably very, very critical. Since you have a very international panel here and a very, very international audience, would be interested, maybe starting with Greg, in your perspectives of, are there different requirements and different demands as you talk to customers of yours and from your experiences in the different geographies? So is data visualization and the requirements for that, does it actually vary by country? Does it vary more by audience within the organization, or are there any other variables one needs to think about?
Yeah, sure. I'm based in New York. Most of our business comes from IT. About 30% plus of our data is actually from the IT world, and it shouldn't surprise us then that our revenues exceed the 30%. So much of that demand comes from San Francisco. I think there's a lot of very big companies that are actually made up of very small companies within that, and it's compartmentalized, but we're seeing that barrier break down. And I think data and the visualization of data helps break those walls.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we operate across all the various geographies around the world, and I think everyone wants a data platform and data visualization to make it simplified. But it's a matter of, I think, looking at where you're starting from. And in a lot of the markets where data is coming on board, the needs or the demands of data visualization are probably not yet as sophisticated or advanced, because you look at it in context of what you have available, and a step up is, even with basic visualization, is already giving you greater insights than you have initially. But obviously, with the amount of data that everyone has now, the more you can visualize, and the more you can bring it to life. As Carsten did with his infographics, it becomes incredibly powerful.
Okay, Carsten, very quickly, because we're running out of time, just one quick thought. You're doing the study in 60 markets. Any differences on the visualization, or are they all pretty much the same requirements?
No, the markets are very different, so I think the stories we want to tell is very different from Romania to Sweden. So we need to take into account what level of sophistication, what level of income is that market on. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your time. I think we're out of time. Thank you all.